Okay. All right. It looks like he's probably darting in and out. Um, okay. So it's been a knucklehead week. Four things I'd like to do. One is just see if anybody has any final comments or questions on the edits that I sent out on Monday. Second, I want to make sure I have identified for you the two or three things that I still need to clean up. Third, I want to talk about getting the report printed in a little more professional looking manner. And then finally, just quick chat about the March 9th date with the full Futures Commission at which we are asked to present our report. So with great trepidation, let me first ask if you have any comments on what I sent out Monday, particularly the 10% section, which I hope I got right, but the floor is open for you to comment on anything. And by the way, if I didn't say it before, if we're not comfortable after today with just voting to move on and approve, I'm not going to press to do that. I want to make sure everybody's comfortable. Yes, Matt.
Yeah. I appreciate that because I'm a bit uncomfortable with some of the pieces, things
Okay.
that there. So that's cool. And I realize, they pushed out the meeting until March, so we've got a little more time.
Right.
I was more comfortable with it a while ago, and now, rereading it again, there's some parts that I think need to be adjusted or some hunks removed. So can I just go down my list and
Go
talk
ahead.
about the
Yep.
spots?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so page 9, when we're talking about the need for affordable housing, they go through all these different pieces, statistics that are all reasonable to put in. I have no problem with, the segregation of where the 34 states and et cetera. But there's a sentence at the end of that where we're talking about access to affordable housing is also connected to economic development, job and population growth, and a reduced need for social services. That paragraph just before 3 starts. The next sentence, increasing affordable housing will help Connecticut address its existing systemic segregation and inequality. I think that's a political statement, a sort of a strident statement that needn't be in there. I think just ending it at access to the affordable housing, I think says that there are other things that are there without making a political statement. We're supposed to be just offering information to the towns to help create affordable housing. I think that goes a little too far. So that's my first piece.
Okay. All right. Well, go ahead. Why don't you go through your list and then we'll go back if we have to. I flagged that.
Page 14, where we talk about the reports. It's all well and good that we say we have some nice ones, but then we talk about the ones that were problematic. And yeah, they were problematic. There's no doubt about that. The word frustrating is, we've sort of talked about how I realized, Tim, when you said you were frustrated by it, it's coming out in the document, and it need not. I think what might have been better is to say some of them needed better work or future work, and I would have said, would have benefited and will benefit from this report, rather than saying it's frustrating. So there were issues with some of these reports, and say, hey, there's a future here, rather than saying they were frustrated. We were frustrated by it. We saw some problems.
Okay. I'm looking at 14. Where's the word frustrating? I see it. Okay.
Fourth graph.
Yep.
And by way of example, and then you go through it and explaining. I have no problem with pointing out the different things, but then in page 15, it goes into the more of a comment section rather than fact section. However, the predominant characteristics of the vast majority, no concrete action steps, no deadlines, no this and that recommendations. I don't think it's needed. I think the whole point is that this report will be helping them do a better job. And maybe we should suggest some of them that have done the reports that may have been problematic should read our report. And if there is a guide, as we suggest later on, that the state comes up with a template guide. So I'd want to stay away from the strident comments and just stick more to the basics of what we're working on. So that's that one. It just seems abrasive. And I think Matt Danzer had said the same thing in an earlier part. Let's stay away from of it being, abrasive and move forward, in a better, light. I have no problem with what the issues were with the reports. It's just that when we really get into it, okay, that's that point.
Okay.
In 17B, conducting a housing needs assessment. That's page 17.
Yep.
Third graph, fair share shows up. And again, fair share is not an actual thing that exists in the state of Connecticut. And while some people think it's, greater than sliced bread, saying that we're going to spread it all around the need for affordable housing throughout the state, and here's each town going to do their fair share, it's still not something that's active. That could be removed there. It says helpful data sources will include affordable housing needs calculations prepared by Open Communities Alliance. That's a fine statement, because then they will do it. You could go to them and say, hey, what is our need? What can you do? And we don't have to put in fair share. And fair share comes in again twice later. And I think, again, it's problematic.
So you're not objecting to the listing the organizations. You're just saying don't highlight the phrase fair share.
Yeah, okay. I don't mind if people seek out where to get information on what their affordable need is, but I don't think we have to be pointing out fair share, since it actually doesn't exist in the state. It exists in New Jersey, but not here. It's a theory, not an actual situation.
Okay.
Where are we? I think the next one is 10%.
Can I just clarify before we move on from that? So if you go under B, and Matt, are you fine if we say helpful data sources may include data prepared by, and then listing the organization? So you're deleting the reference to will include fair share affordable housing need calculations.
Yeah, I don't think it's a problem that we list the groups that are out there. We've got Alice report before. I mean, they exist. These reports exist. These organizations exist. They're there. They can be helpful. I mean, do you have an issue with the listing of the names?
I don't. I do agree that fair share can be is an issue that has certainly been controversial, and I know that there are a lot of proponents of it. However, there are a lot of people that have significant concerns with it. So I think I would refrain, as you mentioned, from incorporating it in the report at this time, since it is not the requirement in Connecticut at this point.
Right. I mean, that is the issue, and it's, the numbers are daunting, to be honest. When you look at what they're saying in some of the towns, I don't believe it's even possible for some of the towns to get to their fair share, just physically, trying to get to 10%. And that brings me to 10%. So, Tim, I offered my services to help you write it. I didn't get an email from you when I came back. So
yeah, that was just the timing on my end. I was just swamped.
Hey, I was swamped. You know that I chaired 12 and a half hours of meetings within 48 hours of each other for the RTM. It was the longest meeting ever held in town. So that's where I've been dealing with some stuff. Anyway, 10%. It's better for sure. So the sentence, when you're at M in the second sentence.
What page are we on here?
On page 25.
27. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I just must have misread it. 27.
Got it.
After the comma, 830G comma, but does not mean, it should be may not mean, because we don't know if a town does or does not need more affordable housing. It's conjecture of us to say it does not mean. So I think that word is something that we could easily change. And then it changes again in the last sentence as well, where it says, the point is that achieving 10% affordability does not mean, it should be may not mean that a town has met it. We don't know. So we should, keep it as a may rather than, may and shall, from a legal perspective, does and may. So this is inaccurate. I'm not sure if we could massage that wording a little in the body of the analysis. Later on in it, it says, or when a town achieves 10% and has not met a state standard. What is the state standard? I didn't know there was one. That's we're using that as saying state standard, and it's like, so, and in here, you do put in the saying, thus establish 10% affordability is a threshold for achieving an ongoing exemption. That's good. I think maybe something say the towns, look to that as a goal, but still more affordability may be needed. I mean, that's like something in there. The biggest piece I got is the piece that's in italics again, and that's more of commentary rather than fact-based, where it's Connecticut's housing policy, affordable housing need, satisfy 10% of the town's housing, and the need extends to approximately 30% more of that population. That's a political statement. And
All right,
I think it crosses.
All right, I'm going to disagree with you there. That is right out of state law. That's how we've defined affordable housing, 80% of median.
Right. Well, you say that, I have no problem with 80% of the 50% median, but then in the italics, when the analysis goes on to approximately 30% more, it doesn't have to be in there, because then people are going to look at it as like, what, now 830G is going to go to 30% rather than 10%?
Well, not the exemption, but the need, yeah.
Well, I have no problem with the need. That's the point. It's the numbers there, the factual numbers of the 80% of the 50% median. That's cool. 40% of the population, 80% less than median income. Those numbers are good. But the part about saying approximately 30% more of the population, I'm not sure it's necessary to put that statement in. So
okay,
those could be, I mean, it's theirs, Tim. You're almost there in my mind. So
okay.
Next one. And it's the one that I've had a bugaboo about for a while, 34. Where are we here? Inclusionary zoning. It says at the bottom of the first sentence, it is beyond the scope of this report to engage in a review of the pros and cons, such programs, blah, blah, blah. And it says the working group would like to note these cautions. And right off the bat, inclusionary zoning can be a deterrent to multifamily development. Well, if we're not supposed to, if it's outside of our scope to engage in the pros and cons, why is the first thing we're saying is that it's no good? When, from my perspective, in Westport and other Fairfield County towns, inclusionary zoning has been a monster in creating affordable housing. It's maybe the best tool that's being used. We sort of say, in towns that have the finances, but that should be right off the bat. It is an effective tool of creating affordable housing. Now, in some places where it's financially difficult to build, yeah, maybe it's problematic. But, even in Norwalk, where they already have the 830G, exemption, they're still building, and they put in 10% affordable housing all over the place. And the builders, they don't care, they're doing it because the value of the building is important. So I think rather than dissing it, we could say, hey, it's a great tool for some and it's problematic for others, and give a more fair shake on it. Because for me, I've worked very hard on creating inclusionary zoning in town, and it works. And, our town's proud of what we've been doing with it. So that's the part.
Maybe one way to, this is Kylie, sorry again for my camera. Maybe one way to sort of split the baby on that is to specify that inclusionary zoning can be effective in certain real estate markets, and maybe a caution that in other real estate markets, it can serve as a deterrent, so that folks have that context for it and understanding, yeah, in Fairfield County, when the market's hot, it's not a deterrent because folks are willing to put in the 10%. And a large portion of the state, it could act as a deterrent where there's insufficient gap between the market rents and the affordable for a developer to be able to recoup costs. There may be some way to sort of.
Yep. I'm fine with that. I don't disagree that
I don't know.
Yeah, that works for me, because it works for us here, but it may not work in some of the smaller towns. The funny thing is, if it was implemented across the state, then you wouldn't have this jumping of developers jumping towns. If everybody had it, then there wouldn't be the jumping of what you're talking about, is the jumping of a developer moving off. But the diss of it, or the con of it, is so much larger in girth on the page than just saying about inclusionary zoning that it gave me pause. So I would like to have it more give and take. Inclusionary zoning works for some, doesn't work for others. Here it is. So however we can work those wordings out, I think is fine. So
Okay,
that's that piece. And then again, inclusionary fair share appears 2 more times on page 34 and 35. And again, it doesn't exist. And we can call it something different, a needs approach to affordable housing rather than fair share. And then the last thing in the list, so when 34 and 35, both fair share are listed, and it was 21. I forget what. It's in there. So both of those I got, yeah, the other one is number 21 here when we get to the big list. Review a town's fair share housing calculation. It should be their affordable housing needs calculation, not fair share. Just because it says what we want it to say without bringing in this thing that doesn't actually exist and also causes a lot of people some concern. Last thing is on our list of things that are there, use of municipal land, we don't list as a possibility. Setting up a fund for affordable housing isn't on the list. We should be putting all the possibilities of what towns can do. Buying down.
I'm sorry, what
market
page are
rate-
you on? What page are you on now?
It's just the bottom when we give the list of things, potential changes or, when we're listing the different things. Where did it go? Those are the appendix.
I would add to that list if it's not already in there, and I apologize for not having the document up in front of me, but we often think about this whole need in the context of more development, which is part of the thing, but also identifying more landlords who will take vouchers that counts towards folks 830G calculation. So incentivizing landlords to work with voucher holders is another one. And as well as promoting the CHAFA mortgage programs, that is another way to use make existing stock more affordable to folks. So those are in addition to local housing trust funds and the other things Matt was mentioning.
Yeah, and it's like, what about, developer who's going to build an inclusionary zoning? So let's say he's building 40 units and 8 of them are going to be affordable. What if there's a possibility of buying down some of the market to become affordable with the fund that we've raised? I mean, we're looking at it mostly for the financially well-off communities, but it does. So let's say we can get to 9 or 10 units because we've raised some money somehow through nonprofits or whatnot, and we can throw it to the developer to buy down some of the units. That should be in there too as a possibility. Nothing should be excluded from the goal of trying to create affordability. So those are my comments, and that's what gives me pause to hope that we're not voting today, that we massage it a little bit more. Maybe in February we make it work better. Because
Okay, all right. Well, as far as I'm concerned, we're not going to vote today. You've given us more food for thought, and I want to honor your thought process. So we're gonna.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. I've made all my notes. All right. Who else? Anybody?
Hi, this is
Go ahead,
Betsy.
Betsy.
I
Yeah.
just have a question on, and I of course lost it, the footnote on the footnote number 12, where they reference the number of affordable housing plans that have been filed. I didn't know if that needed to be updated. If there have been any updates to that, the number of municipalities that have submitted their plans or not.
Okay, that's a good point. I'll go back to Rebecca Auger and update that number.
And
Okay.
I would just like to say that I do agree with Matt's comments and also Kylie's approach for addressing some of those and her additions at the end. So I've been taking notes, so I'd be happy to try to put these in a tracking change document if that would be helpful.
Yes, please.
Okay.
I would like to offer a response if I made a Matt's first comment on the segregation and inequality statement, and maybe a different way to look at that. I do view that as a factual statement rather than a political one, Matt. And the reason for that is simply that, as it states in the prior couple sentences, we know we're an extremely segregated state. That's factual. We also know that housing insecurity disproportionately affects households of color. And so by addressing our affordability issues, we can start to tackle that inequality. that to me is those are pretty factual things. But the other reason I would leave it in is I think it offers towns a way to think about housing in sort of a proactive sense. I think we often hear that Connecticut's a segregated state and that we have, historic systemic racism and all these things. And I think the response to that a lot of times is to throw up their hands and say, I can't, what are we going to do about it? This is just kind of the way it is. And I think having that statement there says, hey, we know these numbers exist. And by putting together this plan and working alongside the other towns and trying to address our affordability issues, which we all agree we have, this is one way we can actually tackle some of our inequality and segregation issues from a mathematical level and otherwise. So I think it offers like a sort of a positive angle on that I think is worth including, so that towns that are hearing, hey, you've been perpetuating this, have an opportunity to look at their plan and say, we can do something to counteract that and turn the tide. So anyway, that's my sense. I think that's a factual statement. I think it's a sort of a positive way for towns to look at a topic that I think has otherwise felt frustrating, for lack of a better term.
Okay.
All right. Well, Matt and
If-
Kylie,
if-
Matt and
here's my
Kylie,
question.
go
If
go
the
ahead.
word systemic was removed, would you have a problem with that? Kylie?
I mean, look, if that's what has to come out to keep the statement in there, that's fine. But I think we know that systemic racism exists across the country, not just here in Connecticut. It's not a secret. I think it's a pretty factual statement. And I think it offers a positive way for towns that are hearing the term systemic racism and feeling like, crap, did we do that? Are we a part of that? Or we're not really part of that? Like, here's whatever that may be to you, or whatever you may feel like your town has or has not done around the issue of segregation. It offers you an opportunity to attach the good work they're already doing as part of this plan to some positive outcomes. So I would leave it in. Again, if other folks want it out and that's what it needs to do to get the whole plan passed, then that's fine with me.
Okay, I would note that it's that where it is in the report, it's kind of a summary statement. I mean, all the however you wish to characterize it, the facts that lead up to that are on pages 6, 7, 8, and the first part of 9. So
I found that I would like to leave systemic in because I do a lot of racial justice workshops, and I found that people are more receptive to hearing it's systemic racism because it's like they say, okay, well, I wasn't a part of that, but I could be part of the solution. Whereas if you just say racism, they equate racism more with like personal racism. And in my research, I found Connecticut has less of that. It's not personal. It is systemic. It's our schools and it's our property laws. It's not how we relate to people. So I would strongly favor leaving systemic in.
okay, that's a very interesting point, Michael. I guess what I'm wondering is there a longer phrase that would state what you just said, Michael, without using the word systemic? That it's not personal, that it's, schools and property.
Well, that is the word. I mean,
Yeah.
it
It has a defined meaning. Right.
can't put lipstick on a pig, as they say.
Okay.
So that's the word.
All right.
And,
Well,
and that's why we come up. That's why we come up in these scores as a racist state, and and they say, "Come on, Mississippi's racist. We're not." Well, Mississippi has a lot of personal racism. It's overt. It's how people interact, and we have laws and we have laws and tax structures, and that's what we need to fix. That's what we're trying to fix systemically.
Okay. All right. Well, all right. I'm just going to circle that as think about in the next iteration. Before I forget, Michael Chudukowicz, on page 20 and 21, I tried to take your suggestion of a score sheet. I just tried to take the subheads out and make it a little easier. I just want to make sure you were okay with the way I massaged it a little bit. You there, Michael?
You you did a great job in condensing it, but I'm kind of with Matthew. I still think that we have an opportunity here to say, look at you, here's some folks that did a great job, and this is why it's great, and here's a checklist to be great. I don't think we have to tell people that we're frustrated that they didn't do a good job. They know they did a good job. I've talked to some of those people. They wanted to do a bad job. And what's going to happen is by writing what we're writing, it's those people in the middle that we're going to hurt. And that, and you know, the naysayers we're not going to change. It's those people that are on the edge that if we get rid of the negative language and focus on the positive, we have a chance to turn those folks around.
Okay, and I'm going to take that to heart. I'm going to take a hard look at the word frustrating and the predominant characteristics and see if we can improve that. But I'm specifically asking on the bottom of page 20 and the top of page 21, I tried to take your outline for evaluative criteria and condense it into something that just a little bit shorter, frankly, by taking out the subheadings without changing the meaning. So I just, if you're not prepared to comment on that now, I just want to, before we get final on this, I want to make sure you're okay with what I did, because it's your
That
work.
is a comment, Tim, is I gave you a bigger document
Right.
that I tried to get away from that negative words, and it's got kind of whittled down to just some best practices. And I would like you to kind of look at some of the language I used
All
in
right.
the original document. That's what I'm
Okay.
asking.
Okay, well, I think what it's in the report now is pretty close to what you gave me. So if you want to go back and look at if there are particular words or phrases that you think should be a little more expanded to get back exactly to your original draft, I'm willing to look at that. But and I will do the same thing. But I was not meaning to change any of the substance. I was just trying to make it a little more streamlined. So I'll go back and look at that again. Okay. Thank you. All right. Rick.
Tim, my only comment has to do with the idea that we suggested a week or so ago about trying to include somewhere a list of the potential supports and incentives and funding that might be available to towns and or developers to make progress on affordable housing. And I just want to say that Kylie and the Partnership for Strong Communities just last week made a presentation where they devoted a couple slides to the affordable housing development resources types, which, you know, for some people who might be interested in trying to lead on this, could be really helpful just to give an idea of where to start to look for help if financing and money is necessary to make progress.
So good. Kylie, is there a set of slides that we should put as an appendix here?
You can. I can send those to you, or you can link to the YouTube recording of it so you can hear not just our slides, but Aaron Boggs presented, as well as Greg from CT Fair Housing. So maybe it makes more sense to list them. So I can send. I'll either drop it in the chat, or if I find it before the end of this meeting, or email it to you, Tim.
Okay. I'm always a little squeamish about a YouTube link in a document that we hope will be around for a couple of years, because those links disappear.
The same thing with the links from these meetings. Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe they'll disappear one day.
All right. We'll send it, and it may disappear someday, but I'll throw it in there. Okay.
I can send the slides too.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Rick. Anything else?
Nope. Appreciate everything.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Excellent comments. And just trying to think what's realistic here. Roland, are you able to, anything you want to weigh in on? I see you're on the House floor.
Yeah, no, I've been taking meetings for here today, but look, generally, I think everyone on this call knows I would prefer to be harsher on communities that I feel have never taken this process seriously and still haven't taken this process seriously. I understand our obligation, and what we're trying to produce is is intended to, as Richard said, hit the folks in the middle who we think we have a chance to convince to do right. And I'm swayed continuously by that mindset. But I hope the folks who are on this call recognize the frustration that I feel and why it exists. It's because generally, for the better part of a decade, this issue has been obfuscated by organizations that didn't come to the table on this issue as honest brokers in trying to advance positive pro-housing legislation, pro-affordable housing legislation. And I worry that by not taking a somewhat harsher tone in this document, by not, as Matt Danzer, I think, suggested, trying one last time to nudge people along the proper way, that we are not establishing the sense of urgency and frustration that I know folks in the legislature do feel. And I feel like we've adopted this mindset. We've adopted this tone in the document, which is appropriate. I'm not saying that folks are wrong, that tone isn't the most proper way to do that. I do feel, though, that it may be received with a tone and a feeling of frustration that it isn't as illuminating about communities who've consistently failed to take this issue seriously. And I don't know that our guidance is going to motivate them to do so. And since we are not establishing legislative recommendations on what to do about the towns that have never taken this process seriously, we may be missing a duty that we have in promoting affordable housing more broadly in those communities. I mean, and that's not a direct way of engaging on this issue or on the document itself, except to say, I find myself a little frustrated that we're making a lot of concessions for folks, presuming the best of intents. In my experience is very few partners in this conversation have ever had the best of intents when it comes to actively promoting and providing affordable housing in the state.
Okay. All right. All right. I'm just thinking off the top of my head here. What if, I'm just looking at the calendar. What if, well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make my own list of the comments and share it with you all to make sure I got them all correctly. What if I get you a next draft by next Thursday, the 2nd, and then let's say that within this group, we'll use the next week just by email exchange to try to iron out any final changes, and then set our hopefully final vote to approve for Thursday, the 16th at this time slot. Now, obviously, this time of year, there could be legislative hearings on that day that could conflict, but I'm trying to strike a compromise between getting this done in time, plenty of time ahead of the March 9th meeting, but to say that we're trying to get this done next week or the week after just looks a little daunting, given the list that we have in front of us. So any dissents from that as a end game? No? Okay. All right. Ashley and William, is there anything you know of right now that would preclude us from meeting on the 16th at 4:00?
Nothing on my calendar. I'm not sure if
Okay.
there's anything on your calendar at this point in time.
No, nothing on my calendar. It should be good.
Okay. All right, good. Then I'll propose that. Just for some of you who may not have been here when I started the meeting, I am looking into, and I have William and Ashley's okay to pursue this. There's a marketing person in my law firm who turns typewritten reports into, professional looking reports all the time. And she's, for no cost and very little time. She said she'd be willing to take a stab at it. So I will obviously not do that until we have our text finalized, but I think it just, we give it over to ourselves to just give it a, professional looking cover and, much the way the Department of Housing document did 3 years ago. Last thing is for the March 9th March 6th, I think I said 9th before, March 6th. And Roland, chime in if you want. I assume it's going to fall to me to take the lead, but I'm going to circulate to all of you an outline of what I intend to say to the full commission. To get your comments on it before I speak. But second, so you obviously all can listen in and maybe during the presentation itself, or at least during the public comment, any member of the committee would be able to voice their own separate concerns or opinions based on where we ended up. So that's just a preview, and I'll try to be as transparent about that as I can.
Yeah, Tim, I'd like to disabuse you of any confusion you may have about that. You are definitely the one who's going to be presenting this.
Okay. All right. Well, I was trying to be diplomatic, but
You should not be. You should not
I should
feel
be
diplomatic
harsh
about
and
it.
strident. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you. Good marching orders. As I said at the outset, it's a good thing I have nothing else to do, so this should be a breeze. All right.
Appreciate all the work you've done on this, Tim.
No, it's somebody's got to do it, and it's very worthwhile. Feels very worthwhile. So, okay. Lamont, you didn't chime in. Anything you want to let us know before we sign off?
Well, I'm great. Thank you. Just been catching up.
Okay.
We're in budget season right now, but all good stuff. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Quick question for
Yes,
the
sir.
vote. How many people are on this committee and how many do we need to have at that meeting for it to be
Yeah, no, that's a
forum.
good point. That's a good point, Matt. I think that our active roster, what does it say on page 2? 18 or 19? So I was thinking that 10 was a quorum, but you make a good point that when we send out the agenda and the notice for this meeting on the 16th, I will highlight the fact that we intend to be voting on the final report, and besides needing a quorum, we just, this is everybody's last opportunity to chime in, because, I will do that. That's a good point.
The 16th at 4:00 might be an issue for me, but I won't know for a while, just to
Okay.
let you know.
Okay. All right.
And Tim, I think to that point, there's nothing that is requiring us to vote on this or for there to be a quorum present at a meeting. Like I do feel like it's appropriate to present like a final product to get people to weigh in, but it may be up to us to just call the individual members who are not there and see if they're willing
Right.
to support it fully. Like I don't like a vote of the 10 members who show up on the 16th at 4:00. I think you and I can just call individual members and see if they're okay with us representing to the full commission that we had broad support, even accountable support.
Yeah, Tim, for our report, which is done minus some edits I have to circulate from Nika, it's, I sent it before the last meeting and just said, if anybody has any red flag issues that would prevent them from
Yeah.
supporting this moving forward, to let me know before our last meeting. And then we just used the last meeting to share a couple tweaks and that sort of thing. But I basically said, not speak now, forever hold your peace, but if you have any major issues that would prevent you from otherwise supporting this, let me know. And if you don't have any, then we'll assume that you're on board with signing on to the final product, and
Okay.
will be included on the list.
I appreciate the process that Rep. Lamar just laid out. I think that's a very reasonable way for us to finish our work, because the process has been so collegial and iterative and open. I think it's very reasonable to finish the way Rep. Lamar is suggesting.
Okay.
I'm fine with that. I just asked because I didn't know how it would work. I
Yeah,
think
well,
I was
Matt,
on the form-based code one. It was just like, we were just there. I'm like, how are we doing? We're okay with it. And
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know how
Matt,
many were on the meeting.
Yeah. So Matt, if you have a schedule conflict, Roland and or I will reach out to you and just make sure your final views are taken into account. Okay.
Yeah, I may or may not. I don't know yet, but
Well, the Giants
possible I might be flying out.
the Giants aren't playing. So what's your problem?
Oh, that's right.
Hey, the Jets aren't playing either. So,
Hey,
okay. All right.
Go San Francisco, right?
Yeah. Right. All right. Thanks everybody. Have a good afternoon.
All right. Catch you.
Bye.
Thanks,
Yeah.
guys. Thanks, everyone.